So my name is Wes Wyatt. I'm a co-president of Salinas Minor County Homeless Union, which is part of the Poor People's Campaign. It's a national call for moral revival. Kind of a church-based organization, but also part of Martin Luther King Jr.'s Living Legacy. And I'm also the NAACP Political Action Chair. You know, just start out there like I go to City Council, I go to the county, I go to Coalition of Homeless Service Providers, this Leadership Council is part of the Continuum of Care. There's a lot of issue right now with the Supreme Court decision, Johnson versus Grants Pass, and the governor's executive order forcing everyone out of state property and abdicating 100% responsibility for its own citizens. Thrusting it onto local jurisdictions, cities and counties, and you know, I'm just coming here with my hat in my hand, with asking for your support in asking the city to maybe coordinate and collaborate with the Coalition of Homeless Service Providers and allow fruition of service. There is a USICH, which is Interagency Council on Homelessness, that has a 19-point principle towards service-oriented, which kind of just says that people just need to be where they're at, and you know, service providers need to be able to find people, so they need an address, somewhere they can be 24/7, 365. Services provided, running water, electricity, just basic amenities, and then of course they have to have responsibility of stewardship over the land and what they're doing. You know, minimal health and safety standards, public. If health and safety is our primary concern, then we need to advocate that every single person needs a place to be. Especially if we already identify them, you know, they're in a continuum of care, we've promised them services, people are getting paid to make that happen. We know there's no housing available, we know this is the affordable housing they can afford. And we're not paying a penny, no, you know, it's just the housing they can provide for themselves. And we just need to support that and redirect law enforcement and public works to allow people to be somewhere, open up a spot, many spots. You know, these are neighborhood driven communities that people just, unless we're trying to kill them, we need to validate them as citizens. You know, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We need basic essentials, food, clothing, shelter, and you know, we could really use some owned property, moneyed interest support in trying to advocate for, you know, yes, they're humans, they need somewhere to be. And they are residents, they're lifelong residents, they've been here their whole entire life, they just don't expect to die this early. And just asking for, you know, law enforcement more cooperation and less pushing people out of where they're at. Just because this theft is what's happening. You know, I mean, people get their cars towed, and it costs them so much more money, but it's so much more lucrative for those businesses to make money off of those properties, as opposed to just like, well, let me just pay your registration and just stay in your car. Because, you know, I mean, if it's a toy, you can have it, but if you need it to live, no, you can't. So let's change that attitude, please.
I want to say two things real quick. I was the redevelopment director for the city of Salinas before I retired. As the redevelopment director, I bought the Green Gold Inn for homelessness services in that part of our community. I will tell you that at least 60% of the male population that are homeless wouldn't move into a free place to live if it was free. Because they can't do drugs, they can't take their pit bull, they can't drink, they can't have the prostitutes. So the problem is not just the absence of housing. The problem is addiction and mental illness. And until California wakes up to addiction and those problems, this problem will never be solved. Never.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
I got one more question, Steve.
Sure.
Wes, you've been involved in this forever. I've seen you at these council meetings for many years now. And I've always advocated for finding a spot too for these people, because they're scattered all over the place. We see these homeless communities developing and then getting scattered out by the authorities, and then they go somewhere else. Are you advocating for any particular location where you would put these people if we were to say, get them off the streets and we want to put them right here, we're going to provide some services for them in the interim until such time as they maybe would get full-time housing? Any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, we have had, let me see if that went the right way. Yeah. So it has been, talked about before. Tony Barrera actually mentioned it about the Sun Street Park over there, where the carnival goes.
Yeah, I know.
And that's like 6 2/3 acres or whatever. It's got running water, it's got electricity to it. I mean, even during shelter in place, we had, we allowed people to just live right there, right? We didn't actually like drive them out, because oh my God, they might kill us instead. So we're scared to death of them, and that's why we allow them to be where they're at, and services to be provided, even just bottled water and food and whatnot. I mean, really, the overarching goal is housing, apartments would be great, but then market rate, per square foot, where's my cut? So, everything, nothing
We're
ever
talking
pans out.
short term.
Yes, short term. Well, that's what I'm talking about right there. Is that 6 2/3 acres? That did not pan out. Tony said something about it, and then 6 months later, he's like, "Oh yeah, no, they changed their mind." So it really wasn't. It was just a little quickie bob for a minute. But I mean, it's still neighborhood driven. You can't just drive, and those people used to be your neighbors until they couldn't afford rent, and then it impacted housing, and you wonder why there's 3 or 5 families per house, because a 3 or 4 bedroom house is $5,200. So I mean, how is anybody supposed to keep up with that?
The only thing I'll add to that is, we've studied quite a few things around the shelter that's out there by the Nativity Hospital. That's something that
The brand new one.
that we believe that's a great model. They're pretty much full. They segregate the males from the females, and they keep the families together. But that really can only hold about 100 people.
Yeah, it's 100.
From that standpoint. And actually, there are people in there that do find good jobs, and they're able to eventually leave there from that standpoint. So that's about as close to a model that we've seen. We've tried looking over the entire United States for somebody to say, show us something that really works in a big way.
Austin did it. Austin, Texas did a huge one.
State of Rhode Island, very successful program.
Yeah, so there are some good programs.
Yeah.
I mean, we're affected by it every day. They're on our streets, they're sitting on our benches, they're unfortunately urinating and defecating and vomiting and everything else.
Well, since it's got on the agenda somehow, I think that for me it's hard to believe people are serious about affordable housing unless they deal about land use policy, zoning ordinances, and approval process.
Yeah, it comes from the top, right? So like, I mean, I work with the director of SHISPA, right? And his biggest thing is if we don't have market rate developers developing where they're gonna then donate the land to SHISPA, then we're not gonna have these additional housings that are available, because then they're not gonna build. And I mean, it's a total ripple effect and affects every single person. So ultimately, Wes, it comes from like your city council, your planning department, your, like, not that we're not on board with you by any means, but we don't have the we could support, right, if there was something, but maybe getting a model like, Texas or Rhode Island, and actually sitting down to present sort of like a business plan is what it would be, and making this go forward, right? I think you need to sit down with some people who are familiar with all of that to have something successful.
Interesting, we have a reciprocal request, that you support, the incentivizing of development, because the demand for affordable housing is unlimited, literally unlimited.
Yeah.
Developers will build affordable housing
But they have to have
If-
market rate that compensates for that, because it pays for it.
if they're allowed to, yeah.
If they're allowed to, but with the restrictions that are coming, that are all happening, right, on the daily, we all know it, we all see it, we're not gonna have the affordable housing then.
That's right.
And so it affects every single one of our residents in our county or city.
Mm-hmm.
Are you alluding to rent control, perhaps?
Well, oh yeah, that's a huge part of it, but yeah, that's the big part of it. So as a developer, right, would you come in here when you have a rent control of
No.
2.5%? Absolutely not.
No, that's a
When your
problem.
expenses are at 5% increase, so they're gonna come and check every single year to pay for it, who's gonna come develop it so that our underprivileged and
And this,
Chispa can have housing?
this council doesn't care.
No, they don't. I
They
think
were
that-
going to, they're going to pass rent control, whether it makes any sense or not, without having any understanding of the impact that has on
Exactly.
this topic.
Absolutely, because in the long term, what this does is affect not the property owner, it affects the tenant. Like, and like, or the resident who's looking for housing or the development. We had Chispa write a letter to the city attorney and expressed exactly this, saying, this is, they said, he said, and I have the letter and I'm happy to provide it because he was shared it publicly. And it said they don't pay property taxes, yet their expenses are on average up 5% a year, on average. Please do not pass this. If you do this, market rate developers are not gonna develop and we're not gonna have any more development.
And that's coming back
That's
next
coming
month.
from Chispa. They're bringing it on August 20th meeting, they're bringing this to, the council's gonna be voting on this. The TAC team, literally, we met, all of us met at the TAC team. They took everything that everybody said, but not one thing for the property owners, not one.
Mm-hmm.
Everything went stronger, from the first original draft to the final draft that we received. Everything went harder. Well, all that's gonna do, it's making it harder for the tenants to rent now, because the people you used to be able to give a chance to, because you could get a double deposit, you're like, okay, we'll get a double deposit, but we're gonna give you an opportunity, right? And see if it works. I use that all the time, and I would give people a chance. And if you do great, I'm gonna advocate for you, and I'm gonna work hard for you. Well, guess what? We can't collect a double deposit anymore.
In the last 20 years, how many units have CISPA provided in Monterey County?
I don't have that number, so I don't know.
It's gotta be
It's quite a
close to
few.
2,000.
It's
A little
Probably-
under 2,000.
a
Huh?
little under,
Yeah.
but they want
No,
more,
Australia.
right? And so
I
with
mean,
these,
We manage a total of 2,546.
I was gonna say 2,500, so that's.
it's a lot of housing,
Right there.
right? I mean, it's just heartbreaking, right? Because you have families that are coming in here saying, please work with us, and I'm like, I can't. Our limitations now for people who are renting, I'm like, oh, now the owner's like, no problem. You want to go ahead and implement this? You have to have a 650 minimum credit score to rent.
So those 2,500, if the council does what they say they're gonna do, that has a huge effect on those 2,500.
Huge. It is, our waiting lists are longer than they've ever been, just to even get on the, you're not even applying for the
Right.
housing yet, you're just on the waiting list.
Waiting
You're a
list.
year wait.
Right.
But without that developer who's getting market rate, because I think that's what the council doesn't understand is the business model, right? To be honest, I'm so sorry, but none
They
of
don't
them
wanna
are in
understand.
business.
They don't wanna
They don't
understand.
get it.
I think
They
it just
need it.
sounds good.
Okay.
It just
It
sounds
sounds like it's gonna give you a vote.
Yes.
Like, oh, people
Okay.
really-
See that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Pandora's
We're
box.
trying to get to the consent agenda.
This could go a long time.
Otherwise, we don't have any
You hit a
opinion.
subject for all of us, it's not
He
just.
was the only public guy,
Oh,
okay?
yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I appreciate your
Thanks for
indulgence.
bringing it up, Wes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to put it on our agenda, just to discuss.
Wes, it is a topic that needs to be discussed. There's
Absolutely.
absolutely no question about it. Somehow this community is gonna have to.
There's a lot of heavy lifting that can be done, and maybe even modeled, just like with the Leave Me Home plan a decade ago. That's actually what the coalition is trying to do: is collaborate with cities, jurisdictions to come up with working models that can be championed throughout the county, and San Benito and Monterey County both. All those jurisdictions to at least just keep your own residents. Don't push them all onto the county. That's basically the county's perspective. And of course, every jurisdiction is like, yeah, it's not that hard, And so that's the breakthrough of attitude we're trying to adjust. Just take care of your own residents. These are actually citizens that we should be affording much more than we do right now. Especially if you don't spend the money helping them, but stop spending money hurting them. Thank you. Hi, good morning. Wes White, Salinas, Monterey County Homeless Union, also a member of the lead committee on the continuum of care. There was a Grants Pass decision through the Supreme Court that's made it a lot easier for people to be driven out of wherever they're at. We need to stop that whole attitude, I suppose. This is a body I've been coming to for almost a decade now, 8 years maybe. We should have had some kind of consciousness of change and holding our jurisdictions more accountable so that we can do fruition of service through the continuum. Now, that actually would require somebody to be able to be somewhere 24 hours a day, especially if they're maintaining minimal health and safety standards and they're not, doing crime, visible crime, other than existing and trying to be somewhere. They're entitled to some personal property, even if they don't own any real property or paid for through rent. There's a lot more people that are becoming evicted and entering this system that is basically egregious against anyone who's too poor to afford rent. I'm looking at this body and the continuum of care to step it up. We could be world-class leaders at this point. There's an opportunity. Jurisdictions may be meaner, but it doesn't mean they necessarily have to be. And apparently, maybe we're not doing as good a job as we could to cajole a better outcome, more reasonable for quality of life, and not loss of life. Because that's been happening a lot lately. The city still taking people's possessions without a notice, which is illegal. They're just not even trying. And we are not even trying as a body in the coalition or the continuum as hard as we could be. So it's not an unknown. It's just willful ignorance. And, it can't just be according to your contract. It has to be something that's going to be better and best practices. So please join me in condemning the jurisdictions and what they do when they just drive people out for no reason other than they just can't be there. That cannot be the way that we do business. You can't be here, cannot be an answer to the problem. That's not my problem. That is what the police say to people as they're stealing people's only possessions in the world, making it much more difficult, and you wonder where that trauma comes from. It's not just drugs. Please help me stop the sweeps.
I'd like to think that this coalition could be part of what will probably be considered to be a radical solution. But what we have to understand as a community, and this is where it all starts, is that pushing people around the map until they become one big traumatized, chronically unsheltered mess is not the solution. It's the anti-solution. It's costing the community dearly to do this, even though most people don't understand that they're paying into that system. But more than that is, as our economy continues to fluctuate, as our rents keep going up, we're going to have more and more people in the system, as Wes suggests. So we all need to start working on real solutions that will be costly in the beginning, but don't have to be as costly as what we've been imagining they could be. I think that there are real common sense solutions to be had. And I also think that this coalition could form a basis of information, could communicate that out to the larger community so that we can start getting people together to do a big community lift of expectations and get behind the solution. That may sound cryptic to some people. I'm happy to discuss it with anybody. But we can't just keep pushing people around the map and expecting them to solve their own problem. That, obviously, we've continued to prove doesn't work.
Thank you, Jill. I think that's important and worthy of additional conversation, as you suggest. Roxanne, you have your hand up.
Good morning, everybody. Roxanne, Wilson County, Monterey. There's a couple of things that I would like to mention. One is I'm still wrapping my brain around Grants Pass because, as you can imagine, from the county's perspective, people will likely get pushed into unincorporated areas of the county. So this is also very much a concern of mine, and I don't exactly know how we're going to respond, but I am hoping to pull together a group of city leaders as well for us to maybe even do something like we did with the Lead Me Home plan, where you have many people working on it, and then we work on other jurisdictions adopting. This could theoretically at least put some guardrails up, and if everybody agrees to it, we're not saying that, you know, if people are stealing electricity from a house, then you can't respond, but what we're saying is if there is no places for people to go, and really the trash and the blight is really the main problem, then how can we as jurisdictions respond to the root of the problem, which is the trash and the blight, not necessarily the people. So again, I'm still speaking very high level. I don't exactly know if I need a technical assistance provider, but I will tell you that where I'm starting is, I believe in August, and I'll send this to the coalition pretty soon, I am going to have the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness do a presentation to the Monterey County Homelessness Committee. That is open to everybody. It is a Brown-acted meeting, so we'll make sure all of you guys know, and we will also work with the cities so that their leadership is aware that that USICH will be helping us, because the 19 strategies for encampments, it really is service oriented. And I think that we all need to, that could be our baseline. Like how then, if we're doing service oriented responses to encampments, then how do we build our system around that? Okay, so that's the first thing. The second one is we are experiencing a huge amount of NIMBYism. It's worse than when we built the Share Center for the tiny village in Watsonville. And I think that is because, like, as you guys know, NIMBYs are very loud, and people who support the project are not quite as loud. So, you know, I am hoping that I can rely on our community to counter some of that NIMBYism, because there are lots and lots of people living on the levee. I just received a letter this morning from one of them saying that they would like to get in line. So the point is that people do want help. Maybe not everybody, but for the people who do want help, we should certainly do something for them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Roxanne. I look forward to further conversations about that too, and anything that we can do, Katrina and I and the whole set of agencies, let us know, please.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
So let's talk a little bit about collaboration opportunities and events. We alluded to that earlier. I just think I'll just speak personally for a minute. I think that the spirit of the coalition is all about collaboration. I think our power is in collaboration. And I think the more we can do together, focus our energy on what's important. You know, Roxanne and others had things to say up front in this meeting that I think are important, and I think those are potential areas where we could get together and focus. So it is about the power of the group to me.
First and foremost, I just want to thank the coalition and everything that you stand for. I do know that in Santa Cruz County, agencies are getting together to develop their own coalition based off of what happens here. And it really is because of the power of the collaborative spirit that happens in our county, and we should all be proud of that. One of the things that I am working on, and many of you guys know, and is what are we going to do with the 51 people who are at Work Street? Actually, I heard that's 45. I heard Step Up is actually housing people, so that's great. Cecil Housing Authority and Step Up are currently working on getting folks vouchers. It sounds like there's some rapid rehousing and deposit assistance that's going to become available through CalAIM. I think Dorothy's placed it up and said that they would be willing to help however they need to help. But at this point, we need units. So if there's anything that your agencies become privy to, we are about to have like 45 people with vouchers, and they need somewhere to go. They're all unaccompanied adults. These are the original Project Room Key clients. The vast majority of them came from PRK. And many of these agencies worked on that project with me. Again, thank you so much. It really did make a difference having all the agencies showing up and really exhibiting what the force of the coalition can look like. But also, you may recall, if you helped, these folks are highly vulnerable. They're medically acute individuals. Many of them will not be able to survive, I think, for too much longer, especially as we start heading towards the colder months. So anything that you guys can do or come up with, I think that we would all be greatly appreciative. Thank you. So if you guys feel like you have any thoughts, I can put my email directly inside of the chat, and you can reach out to me if you have something. One of the things I will say is that none of them are veterans. As far as I know, none of them are 18 to 24 years old. So if that's not a true statement, I will rescind that and send an email. But at this very moment, I believe that most of them are elderly. The vast majority of them, I think, are over 50 years old at minimum. And I'm not saying 50 is elderly. I'm just saying many of them are semicolon and some of them are over 50.
Roxanne, on these people that will be displaced after a certain amount of time, are we, and I'm out of the loop a little bit on this, that's my fault, do we still have other hotels that are those still in the converting process, or has all of that stopped at this point because of, what's that name, that group?
Shangri-La.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. I can tell you that Fairview is slated to open within the next month or two. Fairview is owned by a lender, and that lender is not interested in any type of partnership in transitioning that property back to the community. There's lots of conversations with that lender to see if they are going to stay true to the home key model, and we have yet to receive verification that they are going to target chronically homeless individuals. Work Street is at a dead stop right now. Work Street is the first home key. If many of you guys have been around for that. It is at a dead stop right now. The building is also owned by a bank now, and that bank is trying their best to work with local jurisdictions to relocate the 51 people so that they can resume construction. At this time, now mind you, it could change, but at this time, Work Street appears to still be on track to serve chronically homeless individuals. Because these projects are owned by banks now, and there's a lot of lawsuits flying around all over the place, I think that everyone is treading carefully, honestly, and the banks are really trying to understand what is going on with the properties that they have purchased. The other property, I think it's Veranda, that one there's no update on. It is also foreclosed and owned by a bank now. The last one is King City. King City is also owned by a bank. They are interested in selling back to the community, and we are working with the Housing Authority and the City of King to negotiate the purchase of that property. There are many issues with that property, but we're doing everything we can to try to bring it back into the community.
We obviously have some problems to solve, don't we? And I sure hope we can get behind Roxanne and find some rooms for these people. Because I shudder to think about what happened